December the 13th of 2022. This is the regular scheduled meeting of the Richland 1 Board of Commissioners. We do have a agenda set before us, but before we state that, we do want to state that the Freedom of Information Act, which is FOIA, the public has been provided access to the live stream of this meeting via the district's website at www.richland1.org, as well as in-person seating with limited seating. At this time, we do need a motion to go into executive session. Devon?
Thank you. Madam Chair, I move that we go into executive session to discuss said items on the agenda 3.01 and 3.05.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and properly second to go in executive session. At this time, we open the floor for point of discussion. Commissioner Lomanak.
Thank you, Chairman Harris. I'm going to continue to raise the same issue I raised last meeting. I think we should treat HR updates just as we are treating legal updates, which is to say we have agreed that we will no longer use just the phrase legal updates. We'll provide more specificity in the agenda, and I think we should do the same for HR updates. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Madam Chair, what type of specificity are you requesting?
The same that we now have agreed to do as a result of that lawsuit for legal updates. Some description of what we're going to talk about. We can't say legal updates anymore. We have to provide some specificity. So, for example, we would have to say we're going back to discuss this case, this pending case. So for HR updates, we should say we're discussing 4 teacher or staff disciplinary issues. I don't think saying just updates is enough. I don't know why we're treating this differently than legal updates. I know that we had to be sued to agree to change what we were doing. I complained about the legal updates for a year. And if we need to get sued about this before we change it, that's fine. I just don't know what the public is, how the public's being served by us not providing more specificity.
To your statement, Commissioner Lomanak, and this is one of the things why I really stress training, that you understand what it is that we do when we go into executive session. We don't have any legal updates tonight. We haven't had them in the previous meeting, and we know we need to list legal updates. We don't need to get legal updates confused with HR and personnel matters. Right now, I have a motion on the floor to go into executive session so that we can do what we need to do. You did send me an email, very confusing email, where you shared that other districts are doing this. And I just need you to specify, because you mentioned, I think, was it Greenville, and what were the districts that you said were doing this?
You could look at the city council and county council. They don't just say HR updates, and other school districts do provide more specificity. But to be honest, I just think that we should treat HR updates the same way we're treating legal updates, which is to say we will no longer simply say legal updates. We can't say that anymore. That's what we said all last year until the lawsuit. I don't think we should say HR updates. I realize I'll get outvoted on that, but I'm going to continue to raise that as an objection because I just don't understand why we're not willing just to say, when we say HR updates for today, we're going to be talking about 9 disciplinary issues, or we're going to be talking about whatever. I think that would provide enough information so that people knew what we were going to be talking about. Thank you.
Okay, and I want to speak to what you're saying, because I think you're not understanding where I am coming from. Districts don't list those items as in their HR updates or personnel matters. They give the topic in which is going to be discussed, and that is what we have done. We have given the topics of what is going to be discussed. Also, to your point of, because I believe you said that we were violating FOIA. We're not violating FOIA in a statement that you sent me. I want to make sure that that's clear to the public. We're not violating FOIA. That's why it's important to read the law of the state and understand what it was speaking to and why it was saying what it was saying. The district did not get sued, Commissioner Lomanak, for us to agree to listing things. I was a part of that settlement meeting. I was in attendance. You were not. There were 5 things that this district agreed to, and I'll read them. And that's to refrain from restricting individual board members from sharing their opinions with the public or the press. Number 2 was to specify with particularity the subject matter of legal advice sought before going into executive session for legal advice. To keep minutes of all topics discussed in executive session, which is 3. And number 4 was to include public comments in the video recording of the regular meeting and in all meeting minutes. And then number 5 was to refrain from using electronic communications to conduct board business during board meetings, which is something I shared with you at the last meeting, that we don't use our personal devices anymore. To refrain from using private electronic for board business. And lastly was to post a recording of a executive session that was recorded secretly by an individual that's no longer on the board. That was the agreement of the things that we needed to change. It had nothing to do with HR. It had nothing to do with personnel matters. And we have Attorney Boykins here because every meeting, we don't need to start the meeting discussing whether or not the agenda is set correctly. If you can, Attorney Boykins, I'm going to beg your indulgence tonight, speak to the specific reason of executive session and how that all falls in line when the items are stated that is to be discussed, so that everybody in this room and those in the listening audience can understand we are not violating FOIA. We are following the law. Attorney Boykins.
Madam Chair, board members, is this on? Okay, good. All right. There is some confusion sometimes with executive session, but I would call everybody's attention to section 30-4-70, and with particular emphasis on paragraph B in that section. And I will publish for the board and the public the first sentence, which talks about going into executive session. And the law provides specifically, before going into executive session, the public body shall vote in public on the question. And when the vote is favorable, the presiding officer shall announce the specific purpose of the executive session. And many public bodies, for whatever reason, will list topics under executive session to be discussed. And the law does not prohibit that, but the law does not require that. What is required by the law is once the motion is favorable, that is, they approve the motion to go into executive session, then the presiding officer can and is asked or compelled by law to announce specifically what will be discussed in executive session. So that meets the requirement of the law. And some people go a little further by putting it on the agenda and having it published. But the law, I think, is satisfied if you just list executive session on the agenda. Happy to entertain questions.
Thank you so much, Attorney Boykins. Any questions for Attorney Boykins while we have him at the mic? Commissioner Lomanak?
I do. And before I ask this question, I do want to point out, and I think maybe it'd be easier if we just post this. There were other things we agreed to as the mediation agreement, not just the topics you mentioned. For example, people can use our names when they give public comment. We can't restrict that. We can't restrict people from their First Amendment rights, whether it's talking about executive session items or talking in public. Attorney Boykins, previously we would list just legal updates. Why did we agree in the mediation agreement that we would no longer do that? Because for years we would just list legal updates. We would not list the cases that we were going to talk about in executive session. So can you tell me why we decided to stop doing that?
Of course, the board decided to do that to settle the lawsuit.
All right, so that was one of the conditions of settling the lawsuit. Does it not make sense to treat the HR updates in a similar fashion as we treated the legal updates, which is to say, are we just going to wait until the next lawsuit and then settle that as part of that? Or, I don't understand why we're treating them differently. Because at the end of the day, we agreed to provide more detail because we want to be transparent. So why do we not do that for HR updates?
You're asking me a question about the board, is that correct? Not
Yes.
a legal question.
Well, both.
Okay.
Both.
The legal question is that it is the board's prerogative. That's the answer to the legal question. The policy question, it falls right into the answer I gave, that it is the board's prerogative. I'm happy to assist the board in working through the matter, but my legal advice has to stop when it approaches the prerogative of the board.
Thank you, Chairwoman Harris.
Hmm. So, Attorney Boykins, let me just ask you, because I hear Commissioner Lomanek speaking to legal matters, and I don't want folk to get confused. We're not discussing legal matters tonight, correct? We're discussing HR and personnel updates, and if I'm not mistaken, Commissioner Lomanek mentioned, I believe, Greenville and some other districts that list these items. Well, I've been busy today. I've pulled a few agendas. I'm looking at Greenville County School Board meeting that started at 6 o'clock right now, and they have personnel recommendations. I'm looking at Richland 2's agenda, which is tonight. They have employment recommendations, certified releases, etc., student appeals, the same thing that we do. So I'm trying to see, I've even pulled Charleston because these are districts that are the same size as ours. And their agenda pretty much says the same thing. That executive session is discipline appeal, out of district transfer requests. We are honoring those things when these items come before us. So I don't want the public or the people to be misled or misguided by mistruths. We're not talking about a legal matter tonight. We're talking about HR and personnel updates. The 3 districts that I just read were some of the districts that Commissioner Lomanek mentioned to me and said that, well, they're doing X, Y, Z. I've researched it. That's not correct. They're doing the same thing that we're doing. There's 79 districts in the state. We practically all do the same, President of the State School Board Association. So it's not about not being transparent. We are being transparent. When we say that we're going to do HR and personnel updates, and we talk about administrative hires and leave of absences, hiring of personnel, we are saying to the public what we're going to discuss. But as the attorney just shared with you all and explained to you, the answer to the question was, I gave a question, and that was, I need a motion to go into executive session. It's been moved. It's been properly seconded. We're discussing it. And at a certain point, we will call for the question to vote, which is to vote it up or down. If it is approved and it's favorable to your words, Attorney Boykins, at that time, the presiding person, which is the chair, will then read those items in which we're going to discuss. It doesn't get any more transparent than that. Transparency is something that we all want, but everybody got to be transparent. And we got to be fair. We can't go out to the public and tell them we're violating the law. We're breaking the law. We're not breaking the law. We're following the law. Commissioner Clyburn?
I don't know if this point is going to, continue to be belabored or not, but I definitely, it saddens me that, there are individuals that continue to misrepresent what we do in this district. And, this transparency thing, no one's hiding anything. No one's, having secret meetings that I know of. I understand that, people have agendas. I understand that people are being asked to do certain things on a daily basis that go against the interest of the district. And I'm not naming names, but it's just becoming clear, on a daily basis. And if you ran for this position with an agenda, with, certain things in mind, then say it. But, just coming up with arbitrary, tactics and, things that's just not what is going to move these kids and grow kids and protect our teachers and give them what they need on a daily basis to teach our children. This is becoming ridiculous. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from any board member before we call for the vote? Commissioner Lomanek?
Thank you, Chairman Harris. The items that you read from Greenville and Richland 2 and Charleston are exactly the 3.02, 3.03, 3.04, and 3.05 type of items we do list. We list hiring, the personnel recommendations, that's our hiring recommendations. The leave of absence, we do list those. What you won't see on there is just personnel updates, and that's what I'm complaining about. So I don't think I was lying when I said that they don't just list an update like that. Because what happens when we go to executive session, is under updates, we're not talking about 3.02, 3, 4, or 5. We're talking about matters that are different than those that are listed, and that's what I'm complaining about. Thank you.
So for clarification, because I'm looking at Greenville's agenda, it says personnel recommendations. So are you saying we should list personnel recommendations?
No, I'm just saying ours. The words they use are different. Ours is hiring of personnel. So so I agree that they do list that. They call it personnel recommendations. We call it hiring of personnel. What you don't see though is these personnel updates where we don't tell people what we're going to be talking about under personnel updates, because we're going to go back and we're going to talk about things that are not related to the administrative hire, the leave of absence, or the hiring of personnel. And that's what I'm saying is different. We're going to talk about things that aren't coming before us for a vote, and that we're not listing in the agenda. And I think that is different than what those other districts that you just listed. I'm not going to, let's move, I'm fine with us moving on, but I do think that my point is, I can be accused of a lot of things, and that's fine, but we are doing it different than other school districts, and if we want to be different, that's fine.
Yeah, and at the same time, even in being different, we have to be careful when we're saying that the district is breaking the law. That's my issue. We have an oath to protect, serve, and defend the Constitution, but also these children, also the employees of this district. So when it's out here that Richland One is again breaking the law, we're not breaking the law. We're following the law. The attorney just came and clearly stated what the law says and even showed that we are following the law. So we just need to make sure that it's clear. If we're seeing no further question or discussion, we will call for the vote. Remember, again, we are voting to go into executive session. We can take this electronically, Eva? Manuel? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose say nay. Ayes have it. Vote is unanimous. And these are the items in which we will be discussing. HR and personnel updates, administrative hire, leave of absence, 2 of them, and the hiring of personnel. At this time, we will recess to go upstairs for executive session, and we will return at 7 o'clock p.m. hour. Thank you.